final finance performance meeting for the year. I will start with the opening karakia. Whakataka taho ki te uru, whakataka. Just before we begin, the Mayor has something he'd like to see.
I'd just like to say our thoughts and hearts are with the people of Vanuatu in wake of yesterday's devastating earthquake. We extend our deepest condolences to all who have lost loved ones, their homes and their sense of safety. In this time of sorrow, we stand in solidarity with you as you navigate this tragedy and begin the path to recovery. You are not alone. Our prayers and support are with you, and we hope for strength and resilience in the days ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we'll just stand for a moment of silence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Okay, so we have an apology from Councillor Scandrett. We've got James on Zoom, and we've got apology from and I think Jake is a lateness as well.
And Tyler, lateness.
And Tyler is a lateness as well. Okay, so have you got them, David?
Yeah.
Great. So I'm happy to move those. Mel's happy to second. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? That's carried. I'll move the supplementary reports are included. Melody's happy to second. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? That's carried. We'll just note the declarations of interest which are there around items 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 and 20 in public excluded. The previous minutes from the 27th of November, I'm happy to move those. Mel's happy to second. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? That's carried. David, there's no public forum or deputation and no petitions, which leads us to Peter, who's come in on his day off. Welcome, Pete. So you'll run through item 7. Thank you.
Right, good morning everybody. This is the performance report. The bottom line is steady and very close but not quite on some key items. Just working through that, both levels of service, well, community levels of service are within 1%. So is the projects completed to milestones. Now I've been doing some work with ELT and with heads of service to support them in closer focus on these goals and particularly their remedial actions. So we're hoping to pick up a couple of percentage points after the new year. The planning of capital is on track to turn green. So what really I'm saying here is that those 4 key amber goals, community levels of service, projects on to milestone and planning of projects, we anticipate will go green in the third quarter. Value for money activity budgets, probably it's unrealistic to expect they will all land 100% on track for the year. There are some reports there from wastewater, flood control, water supply and libraries. There's some active management in place and you'll see comments around what that looks like. Whether that will haul back to 100% is probably doubtful though. Then again, there are always some unders and overs in a given year. Other than that, it's reasonably steady over the last quarter. There will be a full all-in report for you in January. Now, that will be quite lengthy, but it will show you not just the exceptions, but also the vast majority of stuff that is on track and why and any risks around that. And we have received some questions, some of them because of the extensive work involved in the annual plan report and to some degree the complexity of the questions will need to be covered in the next report in January. Other than that, it's fairly steady as she goes. We're either on track or very, very close to on track against nearly everything.
Great, thank you very much, Peter, for that. So noting there have been questions sent through and we'll get organisational responses. Are there other questions? I'm happy to move this. Mel's or Sarah's happy to second it. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Russell. Great.
Sorry, the questions that we've asked ahead of the meeting.
Yep.
Are we not getting them until next meeting?
No, so Peter just mentioned, that because, and I've seen the questions, because of the detailed nature of them,
Right.
the team need some time to collate them. But what we'll do is, once they're in the memo format, they're going to be attached to the report, but we'll also get it circulated.
Okay, just the water one, which has been asked for 3 months in a row,
Yep.
shouldn't be hard to get the information.
Great.
And given that we're going into summer,
So so your point's taken, we've moved and seconded, we're moving on, but the team have taken it. So Russell,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, councillors and Mayor, and Merry Christmas. This is the financial report for November, as the paper sets out. Just cover a couple of salient points. The operating projected surplus for the end of the year is increased a small amount from the previous month, up about $400,000, mainly driven by improvement in solid waste and resource recovery costs and relating to the Burwood landfill and recycling organics processing costs, and additional revenue from greater participation at rec and sports activities, and slight saving in personnel costs at this point. In the capital program, in the capital forecast, more detail will come in the report following this, but we're forecasting an underspend of about $37 million in the core program, and the wording is an overspend of 8.6 million in the One New Zealand Stadium at Te Kaha. It's not really an overspend; it's actually a spend beforehand. So we're maintaining to be on track, which is encouraging. The other point I'll make is that we received the Standard & Poor's. They conducted a review. It's an annual review of our Treasury ratings, and they have affirmed, as the report says out, they have affirmed both councils and CCHL at AA, but they've revised the outlook for both of entities to negative. So there's 2 main reasons for this. One is that the institutional setting which council sits, so basically the local government sector, is not as strong as they've seen before. It is one of the strongest in the world, but because of the rise in costs and the level of central government funding, they see some risk. So that's one factor. The other is council's planned level of borrowing, and also in some part the stalling of funding for renewals, the program that we've got there. So there will be another review in February for the sector. And we will see if there's anything follows that, but we'll advise once that happens. Pretty much that's it, Mr. Chair. Happy to take any questions on the paper.
thank you. That's a really, really good report. Pauline.
Thanks, Russell. Could you please explain that institutional settings a bit further for the local government sector? Is that the settings that are coming from changes in government policy and outside effects, or is it an internal thing?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Now, there's a mix of things in that space. One is the high level of debt being carried by other councils throughout the country, and the capacity to borrow more, but the requirement to borrow more because of the backlog or the increasing need to fund infrastructure spending, so capital spending via borrowing. Also, in the Three Waters space, it changed from the change in government. So there was going to be some funding coming, that's a share of different funding. So there was going to be funding taken off council, if you like. It was going to be funded by the entities. So that's changed. So it's a mix of things, councillor.
Mind you, that would be a bit of a plus, wouldn't it? Because it comes off the books, really, if it's a separate entity.
Well, through you, it was under Labor. It's not necessarily under the CCOs. Could is an option that there would be, but yes, that's possible.
So in other words, it's just the uncertainty of what these changes are going to bring. So it's not necessarily a really bad comment. It's just an uncertainty at the moment.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's a mix. The uncertainty of what it's going to finally fall, but also the high level of spending that's required. Like, it's not all water spending that's required. There are other matters like roading as well as significant capital spend.
climate
Yeah.
change stuff. And so the sector review will be completed possibly in the first quarter of 2025?
That's correct. This year there was something similar carried out, and a number of councils, I think there was only 4 that didn't. We were in that mix that either had a downgrade or their outlook changed from what was downgraded as well. So that's happening in February.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? Yanni?
The Botanic Gardens Hagley Park charges. Just are you able to tell us how we're tracking against? Do we just trying to understand if we forecast that on a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, or an annual basis? But clearly we're not we're not tracking. This is just on page 70. We're not tracking to meet target. Are you able just to give us any clarity around that?
Sure, just on the financial results, perhaps Andrew will jump in after that, but what I can say is that we had budgeted about $2 million a year to $2.2 million a year to come through based on the expected revenues. The meters weren't in place, they've only just been in place and are operating. So there's a deficit of about $800,000 to $900,000, which the report outlines. We're not expecting to bridge that gap. We're expecting that to continue. So in answer to your question, we forecast in each of those levels. We look at it on an annual basis, and then each month we review where we think we're going to finish up at the end of the year.
And are we doing anything to monitor the occupancy impact, given that was the driver, not just financial, but actually the occupancy and turnover?
That's not a question I can answer. Sorry, Councillor.
I think that's something we'd take away and come back to Yanni on.
There's been a media inquiry that was responded to yesterday around that.
Yep.
But
Did you read it?
yeah. So it would be good to know how we measure that.
Yeah. So the team will come back.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'll move that. Mel's happy to second it. All in favour? Against? All carried. Thank you,
you.
Russell. Merry Christmas.
Yes.
Nikki, do you want to come up and do the capital program? So just noting here, we've got the addition and the removal from the project watch list as well.
Kia ora koutou katoa, good morning. Taking the report as read, so I'll focus on the PMO forecast and then the officer recommendations. The PMO forecast for FY25 still remains unchanged at 510 million. This is within a 4% variance of project managers' consolidated forecasts of 528.6 million, which is down from 548.5 million the previous month. This reduction of 18.3 million shows the top change was for parks at over 6 million, which is really positive given that the year forecast for parks is significantly over budget. The biggest individual project forecast change was for City to Sea Pathway, minus 4 million, which is noted on the parks dashboard commentary. They have had a few delays, referencing in the watch list, and have rephased their forecasts between financial years this month. However, they are still on track to deliver their overall delivery timeline and still tracking ahead of budget phasing with a significant bring back required this financial year. So the message is really, we'll continue to do these analysis with our project managers on why forecast movement happens to ensure that you all have the right information to make informed decisions regarding forecast changes.
Thank you very much for that and a really good report. Does anyone have any questions? Yanni? Yeah, we've got the heads of service here. Yep.
I was just trying to find the minutes from that LTP around the improving Bromley roads. Mm-hmm. But my understanding is the plan was supposed to be in place to inform the draft annual plan, and we still don't have the plan, but this is projected to be green. There's nothing in the commentary that talks when the plan's actually coming, the overall plan's coming to council, and I was just wondering
Question for Lynn.
if we know when that's going to happen, or if we could just get visibility of that.
So my understanding through the chair is that there has been visibility of that with the board. The decisions relating to the improving Bromley Roads plan are all board level decisions, so it won't come to council. but the team are currently working to have a public-facing version of the plan that we've been working on, that the team have been working on with the board and the associated councillors at the board, ready for just after Christmas, so that it can be referenced in the consultation document for the draft annual plan.
So we haven't actually seen the plan as a board. We've seen lots of little projects, all sort of, you know, lots of dots on a map on streets, but
And that's
the
still
actual
to come.
plan itself, okay, it's coming out before Christmas, just after Christmas or before Christmas?
I haven't got a date today, but it's coming out before and it will be with the board before the draft annual plan is consulted on, and it will be circulated to the board and discussed with the board. And the project that's being reported on in the watch list is the current project and the current scope.
Great. So it sounds like February.
Okay, so but the key thing is, sorry, from before we finalise the draft annual plan in February, we'll be able to have a copy of that plan and the board will be able to give feedback. So if we need to make any amendments, we can be informed.
Okay, so can you just take that away? Is that right? Yeah. Pauline, could you
Quickly, one for Brent, I think. The Grasmere wet weather storage facility, how's that going? And can you tell us what it is? Is it? Oh yeah, is it just one?
In terms of the program, we've just engaged a consultant to do the detailed design, and construction. I think will be probably occur in about 18 months' time.
Right, there's going to be a lot of houses in there, isn't there? And is that from the infrastructure acceleration fund? The funding fund?
I think Brent could confirm this. It's funded about 60% funded by the government.
There's a funding agreement signed with the government for the infrastructure required to support the subdivision. So I think it's in the order of $30 million worth of work. So it's so long as we hit the milestones.
Thank you. Cool.
Great. So I'm happy to move that. Aaron's happy to second it, but he's got a question. Yep. And then Celeste. Yep.
Yeah, just around the activated sludge and the price difference. Did we manage to find any of those environmental funds to offset this?
I think.
Not yet. No.
Okay.
Nothing at all. Okay.
Celeste.
This is a question for Lynette. I've sent those through in advance, but just getting a bit of an update on the Pages Road Bridge. I see in the report that the business case was due to be submitted early December. Has that been submitted? Or, sorry, commenced? Yeah. And in terms of the, have we put in place any interim options for repairs or safety measures until the bridge is replaced? So I note that there was a recent press article which pointed out that the bridge itself is likely in a worse condition than we originally thought in terms of the structural condition of it. So
through the chair, Councillor, you sent through quite a number of questions yesterday, so we'll have to come back in writing on all of them to give you a complete answer.
Do we have any information on that at this stage? Interim answers for people that might be interested?
I'll come back in writing before the end of the week.
Cool.
I'll just see if there's any others. And are we still looking at FY 2030 for the forecast? Just making sure that we have got because I know this report was prepared prior to some new information coming through potentially.
Oh, sorry, I don't know what it says on the watch list. Whatever's on the watch list is the date that the team are working to.
Okay. So we'll get a memo through on that, will we?
Yeah, I don't know if you were here at the beginning. We just said there was a few questions which came through from Yanni and I think yourself yesterday. So they're going to get detailed responses through, but they just haven't had time given the detail.
Okay.
So they'll get it circulated. Yep.
Through the chair, the detail of the program for Pages Road Bridge was circulated after the last F&P meeting to all councillors, and that hasn't changed.
Yep.
Yes, so the questions aren't related to the detail of the program. It's about the fact that since the project hasn't made the fast track list, we're going to have to look at what we can do to make sure that that stays on track, bearing in mind that there will be consenting delays and other things that we have to consider.
Yeah, but we did the stance last month, which was we're either in the business case process or we're not, and if we're not, we're funding the whole thing. So
the questions are related to the fact that the bridge itself is an earthquake. It's not resilient. So if there was an earthquake,
Yeah.
we would want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to
But
progress it as quickly as possible.
We're not having an argument, but we you know, if there was a desire to change that in the annual plan, we would need to flag that to know that the community will be funding it directly. That's fine,
Yeah.
if that's the will.
So
of
we're
the
not talking about the timeline of the delivery of project, just to be clear. We're talking about the fact that we might need to put money on budget for interim repairs to the bridge to make sure it's resilient
Yeah.
prior to the completion of the project. So that's a different question.
But that's what the detailed response is coming later in the week.
Yes, so I'm just clarifying what the question was.
But the response, okay, all right. Well, we can go around in circles. Any other questions, Kelly? Had some.
This is for Lynette. I was just wondering if you could explain for the uninitiated the high cost of handover and what things are associated with handover in your sort of year budget design phase and beyond. It seems that handover is really high for transport, and I just didn't understand. It's on page 79. 79. So there are different aspects: concept, investigate, design, procure, construction. But handover is really expensive compared to all the other departments, and I just wondered what that entailed. It's in that graph on the left-hand side, the little circle of joy.
Yeah, I think you're referring to the overall phases of the project. That's not the cost that we've spent on the projects, that's the value of the projects within that phase. So what it's saying is that we have a large value of projects in the handover phase that have been completed this year.
Okay,
If you see what I mean. So
the costs are not associated with handover.
no, that's the value, the total value of the project that's sitting in that phase. Yeah, it's not costs.
Now I know. Thank you.
No worries at all.
Tyrone,
Thank you.
Not even in the queue.
you're the last in the queue. So.
This is sorry. Just on the. Just noting the Akaroa Reclaim Water Treatment and Reuse Scheme moved to at risk because of I'm quoting from the report, prolonged nature of the consenting process. So, could I just have a bit of comment on that? Because I mean, I imagine that it was expected that would be quite a drawn out process. Is it? How much longer is it taking than we anticipated?
Might be a Gavin question.
It's just been moved to at risk because the unknown, obviously we don't know when we'll get its decision, hopefully 2 months after the hearings, but it goes any longer than that, it could impact the program.
But yeah, okay, cool. So just to clarify, that's just down to the hearings to panel
Correct.
rather than
Yes,
council.
so, yes.
Yep, thank you.
Great. So that's been moved by me, seconded by Aaron. We'll put that motion. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Alan, do you want to come up and do item 10, the draft development contributions policy? So we'll obviously take the paper as read, but do you want to just give us a brief intro? And can you just talk about the timing of the consultation, please?
Yeah, so we've had several briefings with council throughout the course of this policy review, most recently on the 29th of October and then the 26th of November. And in those briefings, we discussed the changes to the policy, the changes to catchments and the draft charges. So we are seeking your endorsement to go out for consultation on the draft policy. That's attachment A to your report. Draw your attention to attachment B, which is the policy options analysis, and then attachment C, which is the changes to charges. We have also included some comparative examples so you can see how the charges have changed between the 2016, 2021 and 2024 policies. So subject to your approval, we will commence consultation in the new year. Consultation will commence on the 14th of January and go to the 19th of February. We will notify stakeholders as part of the consultation and we'll ask them to let us know if they need more time. We try to be as flexible as possible.
Great, thank you. Victoria, then, Yanni, you had some wording, I think, from memory. But we'll go Vic and then come to you. Yep.
Thank you. You may have answered the question in that last comment. I just want to understand if there's any room to move on that consultation date. I'm just conscious that mid-January, still a lot of people are away for a good chunk in January, and then there's only a short period of time. I wonder whether we preempt requests for extension later on by actually changing the date now.
We've given lots of heads up, and so far it's seemed okay, and it's 5 weeks. as opposed to 4, and we were going to give them, through the developers forum, a heads up on exact dates today, and we can ask if there's any requirement for extensions today as well.
Victoria, are you signalling?
Is that-
I'm just thinking of shortcutting it. Do you want just the consultation to run to like the end of February? Is that,
If at all possible. I mean, we could just determine that today and then
then it saves backwards and forwards.
I need to understand how that impacts anything else which is going up for consultation at that time.
Yeah. Okay, we'll come back to that. Aaron?
Yeah, just a question about around remissions. And it looks like our remission policy will be tighter or more difficult. And one of the questions I'd raise when we're going through PC14 is around commercial centres, that to encourage, because we're still building single level commercial properties in main centres, which kind of is the complete opposite of what the government and we've been trying to achieve. And we could be using a remissions policy to get apartments above shop space in commercial areas. But that doesn't seem to, this doesn't allow for that, or it would allow for that.
So the current remission policy provides for the council to grant a remission in unique and compelling circumstances. The advice of staff is that we have never ever met that threshold. So council is essentially making a Section 80 decision when you grant remissions. So we are suggesting taking it out of the policy. The alternative would be to clarify the remission policy to note that it needs to be the development itself that is unique, and that granting the remission does not set a precedent going forward. We do have a rebate policy, which gives council the ability to create a rebate scheme if there is a particular strategic goal that council has in mind that you are looking to incentivise. So we've had rebate schemes for the Central City, non-residential and residential, which have closed, and we currently have them for social housing and Papakainga. The rebate scheme sits outside of the policy, so any sort of any work in that space would fall outside of this review.
So it is outside this, so
Yes,
we can
there's
still,
a separate policy.
So in the future we could choose a couple of areas and experiment with it and go, hey look, if you throw apartments above there, there's 0 DCs, but you've got to do it in the next 24 months, that type of thing.
Rebate schemes need to be one tool in the toolbox of a strategic goal that council is trying to achieve. So as part of other sort of planning measures that maybe were in place, a rebate scheme could be appropriate, and we can explore that if there is
So
interest.
I just didn't want us to be doing something that then excludes that, but it's separate, so that's fine. Thank you.
Great. Andre, and then Yanni, sorry man, I'll come back to you.
Thank you. Just looking at the contributions for the central area, are you able to tell me what the current development contributions are for the central area?
So the central charges are $29,000.
That's what they are currently?
No, they're currently about 7 to 8, depending on where in the central city you are. They have gone up across the entire city. We had a briefing on this on the 26th of November to explain what has happened.
So that they haven't gone up across all of the city, because in Halswell they're staying about the same, or if anything, getting a discount.
So they've gone up. Central has gone up sort of 7, 8 to 29. East has gone up from 7 to 13 to 29.
Yep.
South has gone up from 8 to 23 to 32. West is where we haven't seen as much change, so it's gone from like 23 to 32 to 37, and then north is I think it's about 13 to 30, and it's gone up to 37. Banks Peninsula is where we haven't seen a ton of change, and Akaroa has gone down a little bit because the growth projections have gone up a little bit.
So Halswell is currently 32,800, not including GST, so 34 including.
Yeah, that's just a random property in Halswell. So Halswell charges are quite, there's quite a big range, just because you've got a lot of sort of established areas as well where the DCs are a little bit lower. We've just picked some random properties just so you could see how the charges have changed.
Cool. So I guess what I'm trying to get my head around is more than tripling development contributions in the central city, where we're trying to get more housing, and we have a goal of people living in the inner city, but development contributions will be around the same for there as they are for outer suburb housing, which requires more infrastructure that you need to build. So I'm just trying to figure out how this is consistent with all of our goals and what we're trying to do, and how that can more than triple, but other areas could stay the same when the infrastructure costs are higher.
So the charges are really the result of the catchments that we draw and then the projects that are allocated within those catchments.
Yeah.
So we don't find out what the charges are until we get kind of towards the end of the policy review.
Yeah.
So the charges are higher in Central than they were previously, but again, the charges within Central are relatively consistent with other councils. We just had a uniquely low DC policy charges in 2021.
Okay,
If there was, again, as I said before, regarding the rebate scheme, if there is a particular strategic goal that council has in mind, a rebate scheme may be a better way of addressing that as opposed to some kind of cap.
Well, we have a goal with Andre. If I jump in, I know exactly what you mean, which is we're trying to encourage people into the CBD. Yes, yet we're tripling the DCs. Yep. So what you're saying is, what's the signal we can send as a council to encourage more houses in the CBD? Yeah. Well, my next question was the goal is around within the 4 Avs, right? It was 20,000 people or whatever it is. Had you considered a catchment for the 4 Avs? Because I noticed that the 4 Avs covers 2 different catchments, right? With in this policy.
Because the charges have gone up everywhere, it doesn't, and the charges are relatively flat with the exception of West and North. Messing with the catchments wouldn't necessarily result in DCs being particularly low in the central city. We don't know what they would be, but that's not necessarily a guarantee that would produce a DC charge that is quite low in the central city, because it depends on what projects are allocated as benefiting the central city and how much growth is projected in our growth model within the central city. So it's not necessarily, redrawing the catchments isn't necessarily a guarantee that you would get lower charges in certain parts of the city. We tend to find Greenfield, what was our Greenfield catchment, was higher because the cost to deliver projects in Greenfield areas was more.
Yeah.
And when the growth model allocates growth, it's allocating it where there is capacity. So it will allocate to the point where it's gone, there's no more capacity here, and then it won't allocate there anymore. So changing the catchments won't necessarily change the amount of growth that is expected in a place, because that's coming out of the growth model.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess where I'm going with that is you don't need to build great big detention basins and everything for apartments in a city. Yeah, they'll be paying about the same in development contributions as housing around the outskirts of Christchurch that requires facilities that cost tens of millions of dollars to build. But just on that, what I'm trying to figure out in the list of projects, the amount that it shows, is that the amount that is still to be collected? I'm trying to figure out what is already being collected for some of those projects.
The schedule of assets won't say what has been collected. It's just it just notes the total budget for that project, and then how much is allocated to growth. So we don't include the current collections for each project in the DC policy.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. So each of these figures is just the total cost, but to find out what has been collected so far would be a matter of asking for an update.
Yeah, we don't have that on hand.
Cool. Beautiful. Thank you. And just lastly, neighbourhood parks. So for Hallsville, for example, the amount's increasing by 1,000%. So from around 500 to 5,000 collected for neighbourhood parks. So in the context of Hallsville, 3,000 homes to come, we'll collect around $15 million for neighbourhood parks. What are those parks?
So
and what's defined as a neighbourhood park?
Neighbourhood parks is a program. I don't know if we've got. Yeah, it's a program of work.
Yeah.
but I can't speak to that project. I can't speak to that itself because I'm not an asset planner.
Okay.
So I've got.
Cool. Thank you.
I can come back if that's okay, Andrew. I've got Yanni, then Aaron, then James. And I'm just getting some advice from the Chief Executive.
My question's not too dissimilar, but I look at some of the catchment maps and I just have concern, and again, this was raised in the briefing, that like you've got, in some areas, for example, you've got in the Linwood catchment or the East catchment, you've got areas that have got greenfield, lots of greenfield growth, and you've got brownfield areas like Linwood and Woolston. So I'm just trying to understand, is there a way that, because obviously it's important we consult, is there a way that we can have an option around smaller catchments, which would sort of pick up some of the concern, I think, around how the DCs are being allocated?
So changing the catchments is a really significant change to this policy. It's the reason that we had multiple briefings on the catchments, because it's the first thing that gets done, and then we do the cost allocations. We go through the entire capital program and do the cost allocation, so identify growth and then identify which catchments benefit from that infrastructure. And then we have to do all the data inputs for the schedule of assets and then run the model. So all of that takes about 8 weeks. So if we were to change the catchments, that is a really significant change, and we wouldn't probably have a draft policy to you until probably April.
But like, how is it fair that the brownfield development, like in Linwood and Woolston and Avonside and even Richmond, is paying for the growth projects that go all the way out to Preston's?
So when we draw the catchments, we have to balance a few things. One is household growth. We also have to include business growth and keep that in mind and make sure that we're not splitting commercial centres and business areas. The other thing that we kept in mind this time was, you might remember when we did the last rep review, we did a bit of work around asking people where they go, where they do their shopping, where their communities are. So as we drew the catchments, that was also kept in mind around where are people using infrastructure and facilities, and how do we draw these? So if you go too small, keeping that balance right becomes really hard. And as Ellen said, often those projects are allocated across multiple catchments anyway. So it may not necessarily make a difference in terms of how that split happens.
Right.
It would just
I'm just wondering whether, given the level of questions, I've just been talking with the team, whether we actually just park this and we'll schedule a workshop in January, because there still seems to be some fundamental things that I'm just conscious, once we go out, we've effectively got an approach. And I'm just wondering whether, would that be something people are more keen with?
I mean, I guess the thing I was keen on is, I understand they need to get it out for consultation, but I want to have as much flexibility within the consultation document that if people make submissions they want X, Y, Z, we don't get told, we didn't consult on it, we can't do it.
And I just want to be clear on that, and I'm not sure we're going to get that outcome out of sitting in the meeting today to do it.
You'll delay the whole consultation. They want to go out in January.
Yeah, but we've got to get it right, and I don't want to do it on the fly here. So
I think we need advice on
just
that.
to be clear, you do, if you go out to consultation, you do need an agreed proposal to go to consultation. So that if you can't just go out as in give us your view about anything, we haven't got any idea yet. You do need a firm proposal. You go to consultation. You can vary it after consultation, but if you do need more time to get a proposal, you could defer this till the next year, do a workshop, and then come back with a firm proposal.
I mean,
Yanni, and then I'll come to you, Sarah.
I mean, just the other very specific
and I've got James as well.
Question I had, so I'll just flip back, but in terms of understanding the changes, is it right in understanding that one of the biggest changes is that stormwater and flood protection is going from a catchment basis to a citywide basis? So actually people in like the central city are paying for a lot of stormwater and flood protection that is across the city. Is that, I'm just trying to understand what the key driver is to the significant difference from last time. And my understanding is that we've opened up some of the catchments more citywide, or
the biggest driver is, there's two things. There's the changes to the capital program, but also there was what we talked about in the last briefing around growth. And compared to the 2021 policy, in the long term, growth is projected to slow. So the first 10 years, it's about the same, but as we move further out, Stats NZ are projecting a slower rate of growth, which is having an impact on those charges because essentially it's been spread across less households than it was in 2021. So those are the two big drivers to the changes. The catchments, they don't make that much difference. If we changed them, it would split it slightly differently, but we'd still need to collect the overall amount.
But I'm looking at like the Linwood East catchment, and specifically stormwater and flood protection's gone up from $752, and it was $724 in 2016, $752 in 2021. It's gone up by $6,000, $6,717. So
we're gonna need we need more. We're not gonna solve this. We're not gonna solve this today. So what I'm gonna do is I've got James and then Sarah. Yep. So James and then Sarah, and then I want to leave this laying on the table so we've got time for a workshop, because another workshop, and I apologise for that, but we're not going to land an outcome today. James.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. And I agree that could be a good idea. Answers to these questions, though, might help frame that for me, but I think that's a good suggestion from you. Kind of following on from what Andre had said, look, we have a goal to have 20,000 residents living inside the central city inside the 4 avenues by 2026. We currently have about 10,000, so we're clearly on track to fail to meet that target. I guess I have 2 questions, and really one is, how does this draft policy take into account the council's own objectives to encourage that residential development inside the central city? And 2, what has changed since our last briefing session on the DC policy relating to that central city development, given the sentiments that I expressed around that, and it was obviously echoed pretty clearly by the council as well.
Okay. So in terms of the charges, as we talked about in the previous briefings, the big change has been to the increase in capital costs and the decrease in growth. So again, changing the catchments wouldn't necessarily drop the charges. If there is a strategic goal that council would like to achieve, like encouraging more investment in the central city, a rebate scheme...
20,000 residents inside the CBD by 2026. I hope that underpins everything, because that's what we shouldn't have goals if they're not known.
Can I just add to that, Mr. Chair? There will be some local, it's a priority development area for the local area planning program. So the central city will have that. And also, as Alan's just outlining, the better way of addressing DCs for the central city would be through a rebate policy. And that's what was there last time in addressing DCs in the central city, where they were rebated.
Yes, but the issue is that we don't have that. Like, the council, chose to discontinue that. So I guess my question is, and it's not really, I'm not meaning to be belligerent about it. I guess I'm just wanting to get some clarity about how this draft policy aligns with our own council objectives that we've consulted on, and the council's made a decision around. So I'm just trying to make sure that we've got alignment with our own objectives as a council, reflected in the policies that are drafted.
So we'll bring that back as part of the workshop.
Okay, so I've got Sarah, and then I'm keen to move this on.
I'm just thinking, I think that we've heard that the catchments wouldn't make much of a difference, and some of this is over catchments. What is the process that you go through for doing this is pretty prescribed. Like, you can't just do random stuff just because we kind of want it, right?
Yes.
So how prescribed is it? Then what evidence do you need for all of these?
So in terms of the catchments, we do have a fair amount of discretion within the LGA, but we have to be able to defend any catchment configurations that we have on the basis that people are paying for infrastructure that they benefit from. Beyond that, everything else, the charges that are in the policy have to follow the methodology that is set out in the LGA, and that is quite prescribed. So we can't just kind of decide that our charges are $20,000 across the city. That would be a cap, which council could choose to do following consultation. but any cap of DC charges is revenue foregone because you cannot make other developers pay for infrastructure capacity that is taken up by a development that you then chose not to require a full DC from.
So then all ratepayers would bear that cost.
So you can't require it from DC, so it'll be picked up by rates.
Yeah. Okay. So given that, if we deferred this and people were asking for sort of significant changes to it, how long does this, if people asked for more changes at the workshop, how long to get those changes done and then start going up for consultation? How much does this delay it and what impact does that have?
So to redraw the catchments and then redo the cost allocations, redo the data entry, rerun the model. The model is not the simplest model to run. We're looking at probably 8 to 10 weeks from the briefing, and then we would need to, before we had a draft policy to the council, and then we'd probably brief you on the charges so that we had confirmation that everyone was happy, and then we'd take a report to Finance and Performance. That might be, say, May, and then we'd have consultation through June. We'd probably be looking at a hearings panel in August, and then council would need to adopt the final policy at their last meeting.
That's so we'd go to not having a policy until September, just so we can have one more workshop where we're probably going to decide not to do anything.
We can debate it if we want, but so it's just questions at the moment. Yeah. Okay, so I'll move that we defer this and bring it back to a subsequent meeting after another workshop. I just think there are questions. Aaron's happy to second it. Feel debate.
Yeah.
Yep.
Listen, I do want to get this right, but I think that getting it right is part of the consultation process and not necessarily something that's going to be helped by another workshop. We have had a number of workshops on this, and these issues have been canvassed, and we have had answers in the past. They may not be answers that we necessarily agree with, and we would like to be able to do things differently. But I'm really wary of us getting to the end of the council term and then having to sign it off, or if we decide not to at that point, then waiting for a new council to get up to speed and doing it then. For those who are really concerned about the central city, I draw your attention to the opportunity in Plan Change 14 to do mixed use in SOMO between Brougham and Morehouse Aves. That would have driven an enormous amount of investment and more residential really close to the central city, boosting businesses and those kind of things then. Unfortunately, that was an opportunity that council decided not to take, but there are consequences for that. Thank you.
So we'll put that, Yanni?
Well, we actually have identified that we will be doing spatial planning around Sydenham, so it's not a lost opportunity in my view. Actually, the choice was between doing it through PC 14 and actually alienating a whole bunch of existing industry that actually create small, medium business jobs in that community, putting live music venues out of business, not being able to expand the skate park, putting down panel beaters and a whole bunch of other industry that work in that community because of the impact of not going through a good process in terms of mixed use. And if you want an example, just look at what's happening to the local bars now in the St. Asaph area that are dealing with noise complaints from new mixed use residential that is impacting on their viability, right? So we haven't ruled out doing anything in that area. We've got other processes that we're in charge of as a council rather than the government imposed PC 14. So I think it's a little bit unfair to criticise us around that. But anyway, I'm happy to support deferring this. I do think the key thing for me is making sure that when we go out with the options, there's sufficient ability for people when they make submissions to look at some of the alternatives, particularly around the smaller catchments. Like my reading of it is the stormwater and the flood protection catchment has changed so much that is skewing the pricing. If you just look through what's happening on the peninsula, Akaroa, and you can see some of the Hallswell and Linwood, you can see the changes based on the catchment in terms of one of the most significant cost drivers, which is that stormwater and flood protection. So yeah, I think it's sensible to defer it. I don't want to delay this policy getting in place any sooner than it needs to, but I do think it's important we can have sufficient ability to address concerns through the consultation process, and I just want to get certainty that we can do that.
Okay, so can we put that motion? So all in favour? Against? Abstain from Sarah? Yep, that's carried. Thank you, sort of to the team. Okay, Jane? And this has been moved by Sarah, seconded by Pauline, if that helps people move this along. is the Climate Resilience Fund, the policy noting it's going out for consultation in the annual plan. So I guess what I'm saying by that is this should be relatively straightforward, and that it's been moved and seconded. Very, very brief intro, and then we can take questions, but there shouldn't be any. Yep.
Kia ora, I'll take it as read. Just identifying the scope of the fund and the fund reserve period, as well as the other standard technical policy settings for this, and the recommendation to consult on this as part of the annual plan.
Any questions? No, so it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you both for that. That's great. Item 24, the electricity procurement. Is Bruce?
Bruce is here. He was here.
Okay, let's go to car parking at the hospital. So who wants to come up and do that? Aaron?
Happy to move option 5.
And Tyrone will second it. Yep. And then, yep. So that's been moved and so moved by Aaron, seconded by Tyrone. We'll get an intro from the team, and then Sarah's got a question.
Hello. So the report to council last week was deferred for a decision to the committee here today, because more information was required on trialling a clearway along Hagley Avenue on the north side. The clearway would run from 7:30 a.m. in the morning to 7:30 p.m. in the evening. This would allow for parking in that area overnight, and that would be free parking as well. We've also looked at, or we've discussed with the hospital, the staff shift changes. These are quite complicated given that there's over 6,000 staff and there's lots of different roles. However, they've said that the main handover periods are the morning to afternoon change between 2 and 5 o'clock, the night shift to morning change between 6:30 a.m. to 8 a.m, and the afternoon shift change basically from 11:30 at night to midnight. So those are the main shifts. They have also said the biggest impact, also the biggest demand for parking is usually between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. So this clearway will only be providing parking at night time. So we have some amended... the next steps. So what we would be able to do is that we will undertake pre-engagement, similar to the engagement we undertook for the 2-week trial back in October, November last year, which would include a memo to all elected members, a newsline story, social media update, emails to St John and to Whataora, and information emails sent to the rest of the stakeholders, and internal comms updated on the hub, so everybody be aware of the trial for the 6 months. And then if this is approved today, we would undertake that to commence in the trial to commence in early February for 6 months.
Thank you for that. Sarah had a question.
You had 2 questions now. So the shift changes. So what we don't want to do is to clog up that morning traffic. Does that mean that people who are sort of working overnight at the hospital, shift workers, who maybe come in for a sort of an 11 o'clock shift, may not actually be out in time to shift their cars ahead of the rush hour? Is that what that means? Because if so, that's an issue with a clash on timings.
So the morning shift change is between 6:30 and 8, so it's still going to capture the majority of that shift change.
Okay. Well, no, because it's 7 o'clock, so it's
7:30. Sorry, councillor.
Oh, 7:30, not 8.
Yes.
So it's about half. Did you say 6 till 7:30 or 6:30 till 8?
Sorry,
That's what you said.
Sorry, the shift change is 6:30 till 8, and we're proposing the clearway finishes at 7:30.
Oh, it's 7:30.
Yes.
Okay, because it was 7 till 7 originally.
It was, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And will that keep us out of the morning rush?
It will do, yes.
Okay. And the other thing is, somewhere in the report, I'm just trying to find it again, it did say that option 5 would require consultation, but you've just mentioned engagement rather than consultation. So is it proper consultation, or is it just some engagement with those stakeholders?
It's engagement for the trial,
Yeah.
post-trial, when we come to ask for a decision to make
Oh,
or
okay.
to do something
Then it would
permanent,
need full.
that's when we
Okay.
would do
No,
formal
that's great.
consultation.
Thank you. And you'll feedback the information from those stakeholders?
Yes.
So what happens if the stakeholders come back and go, oh, no thanks? I mean, we've already approved it.
So
I mean, you'd have already approved it, but it is a trial, and we can terminate a trial quite easily. So if we needed to, we could bring it back to you and ask you to cancel it if you chose to, based on the feedback.
Okay. Because reports to us take, 6 weeks.
Yep.
But you could send a memo through saying, listen, we're going to pause it for a bit or
Yes.
whatever.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
So issues with overstayers.
Sorry, Mel and then Pauline.
So for the trial, is there any cost? Sorry, have we?
10,000.
Sorry.
Yeah, it'd be about $10,000.
10,000, right.
Yeah.
Pauline?
Yeah, just on page 31, I mean, there's considerable disadvantages with option 5, and I'd like to foreshadow the staff recommendation.
Yep.
Option 4. And one of them includes the bottom bullet point, the implementation costs would need to allow for a new footpath along Riccarton Avenue. Is that only if it went in permanently, or is that for the trial?
No, so when we discussed last week that the trial is only on the Hagley Avenue section, it's not on the Riccarton Avenue section, which is where we'd need the footpath.
Okay, so that doesn't apply to option 5 then.
And then the other issues were, just a nighttime trial. So overstayers would be, if they were in the morning, would be less of an issue because the main issue is in the peak in the evening.
Oh, okay, so you've taken that off on Riccarton Ave. And but the other risk, which were if there is a vehicle left in the clearway, there is a risk of accidents if cars are merging really suddenly, and they don't. That still exists.
It will do, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Aaron, thanks.
Yeah, just with the timing of the implementation, given it's only a trial, and the engagement is literally all of those people could be emailed in a day. Why do we have to wait till February to implement? Can we not do it quicker?
Well, we have to get the contractors to make the signs as well and implement the signs.
They take a while, don't they?
So, given that we've got the Christmas break, we're suggesting that we do this early February because that gives us time to put the order in and get the.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I guess the country will have returned to normal. The city will have returned to normal by then, so that's good.
No
Okay, Yanni.
Thank you. I was just interested if we were considering anything in terms of overnight parking at Parikori, when we'll have a massive car park there that won't be getting much use. Do we know if there's been any discussions with the hospital about
That
using
might be
after hours?
might be a Nigel question, perhaps.
In terms of, as Craig mentioned yesterday, we haven't had discussions with the hospital routing yet, but it will be available, and we need to have those discussions.
Right. Okay. I think that would
Cool.
be good. Yeah.
Okay, so just noting we've got the foreshadowed one, which is option 4, Pauline. Yep. Cool. So do we want to debate it? No. So, Aaron. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, it would be great if we supported this unanimously, because all we're doing here is a trial for 6 months to create a small amount of parking for overnight. It'll be used from 7:30 p.m. through to around, there's a 10 o'clock where they really start to push visitors out the hospital. But for, parents going into NICU, people who have got family members with not much long left, they will be able to spend time with them easier. I mean, this doesn't solve all the problems, but it does help. I can guarantee these parks will be used all the time. And then later at night, the nurses can use it, or other staff that work at the hospital have got the option to use parking that's literally straight across the road. So this makes sense. For anyone that has concerns about cars being left in the lane, there's no peak flow of traffic in the morning coming out of town down there. There is traffic, but it's the busy time for there is later in the afternoon, so you've actually got hours to go down and tow the people if they need to be towed. So yeah, the problems are minuscule. It's worth a trial. to create and alleviate an issue which can be extremely stressful for people who are using the hospital. And yes, there is a parking building across the road, but not everyone going into the hospital is flush with cash to pay the amount you've got to pay to park in there. So let's think of those people that want to use this.
I'm also happy to support. It goes against the staff recommendation, which is fine because it's just a recommendation. It goes against the bulk of the feedback, but that's okay because we can consider multiple views on things. It does cost a little bit of money, but that's okay because we assess costs and benefits for the city. I don't know what their local councillor thinks, but he's looking out for his residents and we're looking out for ours. But I'd just like to apply analysis and logic to this problem, and it seems reasonable to remove the clear way because there's no constraint, as it appears to me, overnight. And we're giving it a crack, as my colleague Councillor Kewen says, we're giving it a crack, and if it doesn't work, then hopefully that's the end of the tinkering and we can move on. But it will be helpful, hopefully, to people who need it, and that's why I'm supporting it.
Okay, so let's put that motion. So just noting there is a foreshadowed. So all in favour? Against? Yep, so Mel and Pauline, and you will note that. Yep. Cool, that's carried. Thank you. Thank you to the team. Bruce, you're up. And this has been moved by the Mayor and seconded by the Deputy Mayor as well. The electricity one. Item 24.
Oh, I'm taking it as read.
Yep. Is there any introduction remarks? Does it have to be?
No, I don't think it needs to be. It's just really in your hands for any questions. Otherwise,
moved. Oh, Aaron's got a question. Yep. So moved and seconded.
Yeah, so in the modelling, Bruce, with the numbers, with power getting cheaper and that is 20% cheaper in 5 years, how many caveats are in that contract that they can go, oh, it's not cheaper, or is there none? Those prices get locked in and...
Yep, those prices are locked in. If what we're asking for you is preferred tenderer, we will have further discussions with the preferred tenderer Meridian. One of the things that we will be looking at is to see whether we can reduce the prices in the first 2 years, which might lead to and smooth it across. So we're looking at negotiating that, but there aren't any caveats on that.
So they've got no outs.
No outs, no.
Brilliant. Thank you.
In my recollection from the conversation we had yesterday was effectively the easiest way to think about it is we're locking in full contracts, which gives them certainty that we're going to be buying it. Therefore, they'll lock in some pricing. Yeah. Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Well done. Thank you. And thanks for turning it around so quickly. Yeah. Okay, first LOE. So we're up to item 12, draft letter of expectation. Linda's here for the... And I see Laura and that coming down for this? Or you're not? Okay. So Linda, you're here for this. And we'll just note that Victoria and Jake will sit back from it. Sorry? Tyrone will move it. I'm happy to second it. Is there anything you want to add?
The only thing I think at this stage I could add is that the draft LOE that you have on the agenda today follows a workshop from the 26th of November. We shared the draft LOEs with the CCOs and that there has been several, on the case of Christchurch, New Zealand, a couple of issues raised directly by councillors. The couple that we have actually put into the LOE or can put into the LOE as a result of those comments include when CNZ reports on achievements of the destination management plans that they separately report on the Banks Peninsula one, and for reporting on the urban development pipeline that it includes New Brighton. And that's the only changes to the CNZ letter.
Thanks. And sorry I hadn't picked up on this before. I only just realised that it's different to previous years. But on page 339 of our agenda, it just mentions that long-term plan events funding will be held by the council pending allocation decisions made by the CPG. And in the past, it's been held by CNZ. And I'm just wondering, did we have any issues with it being held by CNZ? Because it seems like additional paperwork, having to do it each time, rather than just handing them the money that we've agreed. Because we don't have any right of veto on it.
So it's probably a Nigel, you handle that from our end, don't you?
The question you've got to that in terms of, because the VO will have one New Zealand Stadium Te Kaha to operate as well. So in terms of rather than having separate pots with Venues Otahi, CNZ, in terms of it's held centrally in that way, it's just allocated through the CPG rather than through CNZ.
But but that's not for a year or so, right? Or is it because there's the Te Kaha stuff, the bid funding and things now, or?
No, so in terms of this would be from next year, proposed to be from next year, and work through the detail. CNZ still have circa $2 million on budget from previous, so we're just working through what the reset would look like and how we'd be able to manage those funds easily through CPG.
Yeah, it just seems a bit of an odd change.
Stadium would be open in that financial year.
Yeah, just.
Yeah, April
by the end
26.
Of that. Yeah.
And we'll run through till June. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, no, it just seems odd. Okay, thanks.
Yanni, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, I just note in previous letters we've asked them to look at addressing the issue of inequity and prosperity for all across the city, and I know that they've just done the equity report. There's nothing in here that kind of makes reference to having action as a result of what we know. Likewise with creative industries, we're not really asking very much of them, it would seem. So
With the inequity report, they undertook when they were last here that they would be reporting back on that as to next steps and what does this mean and implementation. So that's all part of their work program currently.
Is it possible though to make reference to that in the letter of the LOA, the letter of expectation, so that we're clear?
Yes, we can.
Cool. And would we also be able to ask around the support for creative industries?
What exactly would you be looking for?
I mean, I think it was good that they actually did that analysis. I guess the key thing is, having a measure of the creative industry's impact on our economy in the city and our well-being.
Yanni, maybe we've got a delegation there for the mayor, deputy, and me in this case, and it's Mel for CCHL. We can just take that feedback.
I think that would be helpful, and I don't know if the arts portfolio councillor might have some views.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. We'll put that to the vote.
Yeah.
All in favour?
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you for that. So do you want to go to the VO quarter one report? I'm happy to move this. Mel, you're happy to second? Is there anything you want to add on?
The only one short thing I'd say is that when they presented their annual report in October, they gave a very comprehensive line of sight to performance in quarter one, and that proved to be an accurate account of quarter one performance.
Yeah, good as gold. Okay, Sarah. Yep.
Yeah, just a quick thing on Te Kaha, and I just wondered if you could pass it through I've passed it through, but things haven't changed. Just that VO still need to be referring to the stadium as One New Zealand Stadium at Te Kaha, and some of the comms aren't including Te Kaha.
Okay.
So yeah,
got that.
That would be good, and I'll flick through an example for you. Yeah.
Good point. Okay, so Mel and I have moved and seconded that. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Thank you. Right, and then we've got the draft letter of expectation for VO. Pauline, are you happy to move that? Yep, and the mayor's happy to second it. Is there anything you want to add?
No.
No? Any questions? Yanni?
We've got quite a big section on te kaha around events promotion and management, but actually looking at external funding. Is that just trying to understand where it's got to? Like, are they doing that, or are we doing that? External capital funding for the stadium. Te kaha.
I don't think that is an issue for this particular paper. I think that you would have to engage with the One New Zealand Stadium at Te Kaha group.
Just feels like no one's really looking to raise money to contribute to the capital cost, whether it's philanthropic. I mean, I don't know. We've had this discussion repeatedly, but we don't seem to be making any sort of inroads into it.
Well, they talk about the City Partners Group looking at exploring external funding opportunities and leveraging.
Let's have a conversation. We might take that offline and come back. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's been moved and seconded. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Great. Thank you, Linda. Thanks for all your work on those. Right. So now we're up. What we might do is go into PX, and we'll do. We got CCHL coming in at 11:15. We might do Nikki's report, and if we could get John. Are you going to do it, John, or the other John?
I'll do it if the other John's not.
Okay, cool. So if we get the resolution up, and I'll move it, and the mayor will second it around going into PX. So all in favour of going to PX? Aye. Against? That's carried. So
Okay, so item 15, quarter one performance report. And you wanted to have a few words to that, Brian and Matt?
Yes,
Yep. So thanks for
please.
coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we've moved on really from the FY24 results, and thank you to the councillors who were able to attend the CCHL AGM, which was held at the Town Hall. That was a really good old-fashioned public meeting, and I was really pleased that there was such good engagement, and people had the courage to come and ask some tough questions, which is what public accountability is all about. So I think we can be pleased that we've made that opportunity available, and we'll certainly continue to do that in the years ahead. It's been a period of change the last little while for CCHL. We've appointed Matt as the Chief Executive, and we're looking to bed down a lot of the work program that was underway but incomplete, and Matt's now got his hands firmly around that. Matt was already in the business, so was able to take up the role from the 1st of November and is putting his team in place and progressing the program of work. You'll know that we're putting a lot of emphasis on strong connections across the group, and I'm pleased to report that the reciprocity around that with the subsidiaries is strong. We've had and are seeing very good alignment across the group, very good engagement with the chairs and the chief executives, and are encouraged that that's going to provide the foundation for strategic alignment and ensuring that there's no surprises to CCHL or through us to you. Mm-hmm. We're also just bedding in the recent subsidiary director appointments, and we're taking the time to invest in their induction processes to ensure that they have a broader understanding of the group's objectives and the commitments that we've made to you and the expectations that you have of us. So Matt will take a little more time to talk to the financials, but I can confirm that we're looking to pay a dividend to council of $20 million next week, and we're very pleased to be in a position to be able to do so, and that's in line with the SOI objectives. And at this stage, we're not seeing anything that would see any risk in the full year dividend either, but we do note that some of the businesses operate in a pretty dynamic space, so but what we're seeing at the moment, we're reasonably confident that we'll be able to and in a position to pay the full year dividend as well.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. As Brian alludes to, it's early days. It is Q1. It's not our seasonal peak for our businesses, but we're broadly tracking to where we'd expect to be at this time of year. Profit of 27, and for the group, on our way to our target of 96 for the group. But yeah, it is an encouraging start to the year. Certainly is. There's the challenges in the businesses, and we tend to focus on the challenges and sort of less so the highlights. But it's broadly consistent with matters I've mentioned here before. The domestic passengers at the airport continue to be a little bit soft as a result of those engine issues. The city cares probably seeing some pressure from a central and local government space, desire to pull back on expenditure in the fields of work that it currently undertakes. Enable is experiencing an element of churn within its customer base, and that's just the competitive pressures from alternative internet technologies. And year on year, the LPC volumes continue to be pretty soft. The container volumes aren't where we'd like them to be. But that's an industry issue. It's a sector issue more so than an LPC specific issue, where there are just still challenges in that supply chain, where running that business in an environment where ships just don't turn up on time because of factors X, Y, and Z further abroad, makes it a very difficult business to run. In terms of non-financials, the programs are underway with respect to FY25 in terms of Te Puna Manawa, Women's Leadership Program. The first module was completed, and that had a focus on confidence, courage, and connection. And we had over 100 attendees at our latest Women's Network virtual workshop, and the group Te Reo lessons continue to be absolutely oversubscribed, and we continue to offer more of those. So
yeah, it's early days, but very encouraging in terms of where we're sitting at the end of Q1. Thanks.
Great. We've got questions. You'll move. So Mayor will move. I will second this. Are there any questions from anyone? Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, I was just wondering, a number of the initiatives we're just told will be done at year end, so we don't really have any sense of performance. In particular, I was wondering, for example, if you take LPC, the target around engagement score, and that's just on page 405. Do we know when they do that engagement?
Yes.
Survey. So, like, there must be a date by which the survey comes out. Would it be possible to get information as it comes out rather than wait to the end of the year?
Certainly, we'll look to update the report as soon as it's done. The engagement surveys are done across the group and are done on a different basis, varying from weekly to annual, depending on the organisation. I'm not exactly sure of when LPC actually undertakes it. Right. And I guess in general, we've got to move to try and get as much on a quarterly basis as possible and move away from the very static annual reporting that some of these metrics are aligned to. So wherever we can, we'll look to evolve to quarterly reporting where it makes sense.
Thank you. I think it would be helpful for us to also see the trends as well. So just having the target being met or not actually doesn't give us the trend information. And so if the people one, for example, is trending up or down, it'd be quite interesting for us to know. So if that was possible, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Okay. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Anyone against? It's carried. Great. Thank you. So now we'll move on to the CCHL draft letter of expectations. Do we want them to sit back? Or yeah. Do you want to sit back into the gallery so we don't ask you questions and while we're doing it right to you? So we have a number of amendments, but did you want to talk to this first, Linda, or to some of the amendments?
Where am I? So I just wanted to briefly run through the changes since the workshop.
Yep.
The changes that have been made to ask CCHL to present and engage on its strategic approach of responsible and active management to the council. To act consistently with its mandate, its operating model, and always to consider improving health and safety, fostering strong employee relationships and collective bargaining as per the Employment Relationships Act 2000. And to a request about considering board membership, we propose that issues that relate to how the board is structured and considerations for board appointments are done through a revision or review of the council's appointments policy and not through an LOE.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Okay. No, I think that was referring to Tyrone's one, wasn't it?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Which has been withdrawn. Did you want to speak to that?
No, I mean, I agree. That's good advice and just acknowledging that. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Hanson.
I was just trying to get a sense of, in the past, we've asked for reporting on the lowest paid to the highest paid, and also we've asked for senior executive remuneration restraint. Where is that captured in here?
Senior executive restraint is under the governance title, just towards the end of the paper, the letter, which is about 4 paragraphs up from the table at the back.
Right.
And it's the third dot point. exercising restraint in the level of senior executive total remuneration, ensure that it is appropriately linked to performance.
Right. Okay. And we seem to. I'm going to put a question in to try and get the trend. I did get it in previous years from CCHL around the trend in senior executive remuneration, and I don't know if that information's been provided. I'm also mindful that in the past, I think we've been told that they're working towards reporting on the lowest versus the highest paid, but we don't seem to be getting that data. Do you think we need to put anything that strengthens our case in that regard?
My thinking was that that was embedded as an expectation through their, as an annual expectation, and didn't need to be called out in the letter of expectation every year. I think we could refer that to CCHL and ask you whether you intend, is that part of your work program to report that?
A number of the subsidiaries do report the top 10%, bottom 10% within their annual reports. We don't do it at group level. We don't collate that information at a group level. And there's also chief executive pay is explicitly reported within each annual report.
Yeah, I understand that. But the problem is that we don't see the trends, and we wait for the annual report to come out. But in the letter that I've got in front of me, I don't see where it says, unless has there been a revised one in the governance section. All I've got is it holds senior executives to account for performance. It doesn't talk about restraint around senior executive.
Under governance, dot point 3, exercising restraint.
Sorry, I must have a different
page 417.
It has almost the same wording as what you've got, Yanni. The only difference is about the reporting on the pay relativity trends between lowest and highest, which I think is the point you're making, isn't it?
Yeah, okay.
Are you saying that you'd like it done at a group level?
Sorry, I was looking at the enduring one rather than the,
Right.
So, okay, cool. So when would we be in a position to kind of see what the trends were? And you don't do it across the group. It's done for each individual company. And is it done as part of the annual report?
And most of the companies report this as part of their annual report, but if there's a specific trend in recording this data over time, we're happy to pull that together and share that.
Thanks.
Cool.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay.
That'll be good. Yep. So do you want to keep your amendment there? 'Cause we probably don't need that now. Are you happy? Yep. I think everyone supports the intent of what you're saying. Okay, and we've got these two amendments here as well, which is moved by myself and Councillor Fields. So people may want to have a few minutes to have a look at those. Did anyone have any questions or anything else they wanted to raise? So the first amendment is talking about public ownership, basically, about consistent with public ownership of CCHL and our subsidiaries, which we know, and asking to, I think you're already doing that, but I think we just want to make it quite explicit in our letter. And then the second one is around good employer relationships, and there's a bit of specificity there around Littleton Port, because there's been a lot of rumours around that. Okay, does anyone have any questions? Yeah, you've had it several times. Yeah, Councillor Donovan.
It wasn't in relation to these, but it was just in response to an amendment that had been sent through.
Did you want to talk to that? I think Bede can talk.
Linda, I think. Is this through you?
Yeah, through the chair. It's for Linda. It was in regards to the 20 million that we just discussed offline. Are you able to provide a bit of an update on where that capital's sitting at the moment with the previous amendment that council agreed to transfer that money to Christchurch NZ?
So it's sitting with CCHL in the DCL holding. It's has not yet been the audit hasn't been finished yet. it's under that's under Audit Office control. We've got no ability to influence their timing. CNZ, as I understand it, won't accept any transfer of that funding without it being audited. And there's the Section 17A review that looks at economic development as a whole, and as I understand it, the chair of the CNZ board has agreed that that capital should stay where it is until that's been completed.
Are we able to, maybe separately to this, just ask for a written update on that? Because I'm a bit confused as to where that's sitting, and I understand that there's not a clear time frame with Audit New Zealand, but I am concerned that we've just signed off a letter of expectation for Christchurch NZ to deliver some work, and I want to understand if that will have any impact on their urban development pipeline.
We can, through you, Madam Chair, we can note that and come back with some more information. It's probably not an LOE, letter of expectation matter, that. It's really a decision that's made after a number of steps have been taken, as outlined by Linda. So we can come back with an update if you're comfortable. Yeah.
Councillor Harrison Hunt, you've got your hand raised.
Can you see me today?
Yep.
Cool. This just going on to back off some Councillor Donovan's question. You may need to take this one offline too, but I'm wondering around the timing of the $19 million that it goes in line with the 17A review, and that's the question I've got: is would it come after the 17A review, or could it come earlier if possible through CCHL?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, if we can
take it offline, that's fine.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Yep. Thanks, Tom. Councillor Keown?
Just with the amendments, is there any cost implications to those?
I can't answer that. I could ask Matt, I guess.
Come to the table.
Yeah, if you want to. Do you want to comment?
I'm slightly reading these live, so it's a challenge to
nothing like us
on the spot. I think matters such as health and safety are absolutely non-negotiable. So whether it's written in this letter or not will not change our approach to matters such as that. I'd loathe to comment further on whether there's a direct cost or not regarding this while reading.
Well, there's stuff there around collective bargainings, workforce and stuff like that. I mean, if that has no cost, then that's fine. But if it has a cost implication, it would be good to know.
Well, that's subject to the Employment Relations Act anyway, so they've got to do it.
Where it relates to the Employment Relations Act, I'm absolutely confident there that that should be in accordance with what we're doing already. It's whether it's something in excess of that, which we'd probably have to understand and interpret.
Can I, through you, Madam Chair, what would normally happen here is the letter goes, they consider it and they come back, and if there were...
and if there was an issue, they'd raise it then.
That's right.
Sweet.
Yeah, so that's great.
Yeah, this is just a letter of expectation, so we'll get feedback back, won't we? Any, I thought I saw another hand. Oh, no. You're just doing that on purpose. Councillor Hanson.
I was just wondering what we got to with the cruise ship emissions request.
That's in the letter.
Yeah. Cool.
That's
okay.
in the letter for considering that and working through the implications and coming back on that.
Do we need to have we set a time frame?
We haven't, but the letter does.
It asks for the pathways, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the letter is for the next year, for 25-26.
Right, because it just feels like we're just repeating previous requests rather than actually getting the action on getting the stuff done.
Yeah, it's a big piece of work.
Well, it's not something we would change our mind on either, so it's probably good to state it. Okay, if there's no other questions, it's been moved and seconded, so I'll put, does anyone want to debate? Councillor, Deputy Mayor.
Not debate, but I just want to congratulate Brian and the team, but particularly Brian, for running such an excellent AGM. I attended that, and there were a lot of people there, and there were a lot of representatives from the unions and a lot of placards, some outside, some in. And the way you conducted yourself, Brian, was exemplary, and you embraced them, you talked to them, you had an open forum. And at the end of that meeting, there was, I thought, a really good feeling between everybody. And so I just want to call that out and say thank you for running such a good AGM. I encourage everyone to go next year because it's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Pauline. That was fantastic. Yep. Councillor Fields.
Well, I just want to say, Councillor Cotter actually you stole my thunder. I wanted to reiterate just how glad I feel, and I think I speak for all of my colleagues, just to have you and the chair, Brian, and how well you did handle that meeting, and just how well served we are there. And we've been well served by Paul, and I'm sure we will be by Matt as well going forward. So really, just kudos there. Thank you.
Yeah, and Councillor McClellan.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy with the performance of CCHL. It really feels like the ship has steered its way through choppy waters, and I want to thank Brian and actually. It's a plane ship / broadband thing, and it's I want to thank Brian and the rest of the team for that. I'm happy with the wording of the amendments, as was alluded to during the questioning. All going well. This is actually the status quo, so there's no harm in us, signalling, what we like to see in terms of good IR. And with regards to the port, as Melanie noted, there is concern. I'm not sure how valid that concern is, but regardless, better to be clear and better to have a clear signal from the shareholder, because actually part of what's gone wrong in the relationship up until, in the past, has been clarity from the shareholder. So much better to be open and honest from day one.
Yep. Anyone else want to debate? Okay, I'll put that vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Anyone against?
Aye.
Great, so carried unanimously. Was that a no or a yes? Was that an aye, Tyler?
Yeah, it was aye. Sorry.
Yeah, okay, great. Right, and is Councillor Goff online?
Councillor Goff is online.
What was your vote?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you.
What's that?
Closing cut.
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Right, no. Right, we're into closing karakia time. Yeah, I've got to read this one. Kia whakairia te tapu, kia wātia Aotearoa, kia tūruki whakataka ai, kia tūruki whakataka ai, haumie, hui e, tā eki e.